Rain loved the mountains more than anything else. Every summer, he would pack his small backpack, fill it with food, water, and a flashlight, and walk into the hills near his village. The air was cold and fresh, the trees tall and green, and the streams sparkled like silver under the sun. Today, Rain felt something different. He had heard an old story from the village elders about a prison that had been abandoned many years ago, high in the mountains. Most people said it was dangerous, and no one went near it. But Rain's curiosity was stronger than his fear. He started walking at dawn, following a narrow path that twisted through the forest. Birds chirped softly, and small animals scurried through the bushes. Rain felt a thrill in his chest as he imagined discovering something forgotten by time. The higher he climbed, the thinner the air became, and the stronger the wind blew. It was hard, but he enjoyed every step. By late morning, he reached a ridge that gave him a clear view of the mountains around him. The peaks were covered in snow, and clouds floated gently above the valleys. Rain paused to rest and drank some water. From here, he noticed a dark structure in the distance. At first, he thought it was just a rock, but as he looked closer, he saw tall walls and towers. Could it really be the abandoned prison he had heard about? His heart beat faster. He adjusted his backpack and started moving toward the structure. The path became steeper and more difficult. Loose stones slipped under his boots, and he had to hold on to tree roots to avoid falling. After 2 hours of climbing, he reached the base of the prison. The walls were high and gray, covered with moss and cracks. Windows were broken, and the heavy gates hung crooked on their hinges. It looked scary and mysterious, but Rain could not stop staring. He took a deep breath and pushed the gate. It creaked loudly as it moved, echoing across the mountains. Inside, the prison was silent. Broken furniture and rusted metal lay scattered on the ground. The walls were covered with faded graffiti and strange marks. Rain's flashlight revealed dark corridors that twisted and turned. He could feel a chill in the air, even though the sun was shining outside. Something about this place felt both lonely and important. As if it held secrets that no one had ever uncovered, Rain carefully walked into the main hall. He noticed old cells with iron bars and doors that had been forced open. Some cells had papers and old clothes inside, left behind by people long gone. On the wall, he saw a list of names carved in the stone. He could not read them all, but a few names were still clear. Who were these people, and why had they been kept here? He felt a shiver, but his curiosity grew stronger. He moved toward the stairs leading to the upper floors. The steps were cracked, and dust covered everything. As he climbed, he could hear the faint sound of wind whistling through the broken windows. He paused at the top and looked down a long corridor. Shadows stretched along the walls, and small pieces of debris scattered across the floor. Then, he noticed something strange, a faint light coming from one of the far rooms. It was not sunlight, and it flickered as if someone had left a lamp burning. Rain's heart pounded. He had never expected to find light inside an abandoned prison. Slowly, he approached the door. It was half open, and the light spilled out, creating long shadows on the floor. He pushed the door gently and peeked inside. What he saw made him freeze for a moment. The room was filled with objects neatly arranged on shelves. Old books, jars, and tools were carefully placed as if someone had been using them recently. There were no people, but it did not feel abandoned at all. Curiosity overcame fear, and Rain stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and earth. On a wooden table, he saw notebooks filled with writing. Some pages had diagrams of the prison, and others had notes about experiments or studies. Rain picked up one notebook and read a few lines. They talked about plants, water, and strange natural observations in the mountains. It seemed like someone had been studying the area for a long time. Who was this person, and why had they left everything here? He explored the room carefully. On a shelf, he found jars filled with preserved plants. Some of them looked ordinary, but others had bright colors that seemed unusual. He touched one, and it felt dry but firm. Next to the jars, small stones were lined up in patterns, like they had meaning. Rain wondered if this had been someone's secret laboratory. Maybe the prison was not only a place for people long ago, but also a place for hidden knowledge. Suddenly, a sound echoed from another part of the building. It was faint, like a soft thud. Ryan froze. He could not see anyone, but he realized the building was not as empty as it seemed. He quietly put the notebook back and moved toward the sound. As he passed a broken door, he saw a small hole in the wall. Looking through it, he noticed a staircase leading down into darkness. The thuds were coming from below. Ryan's mind raced. Should he go down? What could be there? He knew he should be careful, but the excitement of discovery was too strong. He decided to go down slowly, keeping his flashlight ready. The stairs were narrow and steep. Dust rose around him with each step, and he held the railing tightly. When he reached the bottom, the room was much larger than he expected. Broken furniture, old chains, and rusted tools were scattered across the floor. The thudding sound grew louder. Then he saw it. A small wooden chest in the corner of the room was moving slightly. Rand approached it carefully. When he lifted the lid, he discovered dozens of letters and papers inside. The papers were old, yellowed with age, but they were neatly tied in bundles. Rand opened one and read the first line. It spoke about someone trapped unjustly in the prison and the hope that one day the truth would be known. He picked up another, and it told a story of bravery and survival inside these walls. Rand felt a mix of emotions. He realized that this prison was not just a building. It held the stories of many lives, people who had suffered, hoped, and dreamed. The letters were a window into the past, and he could feel their presence. He wanted to share this with the world, but he knew he needed to explore more before leaving. There might be even bigger surprises waiting for him inside the prison. As he looked around, he noticed a narrow tunnel leading further into the mountain. It was dark and tight, but the air coming from it smelled fresh, like it led outside. Rand felt a thrill. He was not sure where it would go, but he knew his adventure was only beginning. Carefully, he moved toward the tunnel, ready to see more secrets that the abandoned prison might hold. Outside, the wind howled, and the mountain stood tall and quiet. Inside, Rand's footsteps echoed as he entered the tunnel, the walls damp and cold. What he would find next, he could not imagine. The abandoned prison had already shocked him, and he knew that the greatest surprises were still ahead. The adventure had begun, and Rand was ready to face whatever mysteries lay hidden in the mountains. Rand's heart raced as he stepped into the narrow tunnel. The walls were damp and rough, and small drops of water fell from the ceiling onto his head. The light from his flashlight danced on the stones, creating long shadows that made the tunnel feel alive. Every step he took echoed softly, and he could hear the faint sound of wind moving through unseen cracks. Despite the darkness, Rand felt excited. He knew that he had already discovered something extraordinary, but this tunnel seemed like it held even deeper secrets. The tunnel twisted and turned, sometimes sloping downward, sometimes leveling out. The air grew cooler, and the smell of earth mixed with something faintly sweet, like wildflowers. Rand stopped for a moment to listen. He could hear the faint trickle of water somewhere ahead. The tunnel seemed long, but he kept moving, careful not to slip on the wet stones. Occasionally, he brushed against small roots growing through the walls, evidence that the outside world was not far away. After several minutes, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Rand shined his flashlight across the room and was surprised by what he saw. The chamber was filled with stone shelves carved directly into the walls. On these shelves were jars and bottles, some empty and some filled with strange powders and liquids. A faint golden glow reflected off a few of them, making the room look magical. In the center of the chamber, there was a stone table with markings etched into it. The symbols were unfamiliar, but they seemed deliberate, like they told a story. Rand approached the table carefully. He traced his fingers over the carvings and tried to understand their meaning. He could not read the symbols, but he noticed that some lines formed patterns similar to the ones he had seen on the jars and papers upstairs. He felt a thrill. This place was not just a prison. It had once been a secret study, perhaps used to explore nature, science, or something else entirely. He wondered who had worked here and why they had hidden this chamber so far inside the mountain. He moved to examine the shelves. One jar contained small, dried plants with unusual colors. Another jar had tiny stones arranged in a circle at the bottom. Each item seemed carefully preserved, as if someone had wanted them to last forever. Rain picked up a small notebook from the table. Its cover was dusty, but the pages inside were filled with writing and drawings. Some sketches showed plants, others showed animals, and some showed the mountain itself. It seemed that someone had studied every part of the area, documenting what they saw in great detail. As he flipped through the notebook, a sound caught his attention. A soft scratching noise echoed from the corner of the chamber. Rain turned slowly and saw a small opening in the wall. It was almost hidden behind one of the stone shelves. The sound came from inside. He crouched and peeked in. The opening led to another narrow tunnel, darker and colder than the first. Hesitation filled him for a moment, but curiosity won again. Carefully, he crawled through the small passage. The tunnel opened into a second chamber. This room was smaller and filled with objects that looked even stranger. On the walls hung maps with markings that showed paths through the mountains. Small tools were ranged neatly on tables, and tiny boxes contained more jars and stones. Rain noticed one corner that was different from the rest. A pile of letters tied with string lay on a shelf, similar to the ones he had found downstairs. He untied one bundle and began to read. The letters told stories of people who had been in prison long ago. They spoke of hope, courage, and plans to escape. Rain felt a deep connection to these words. He could imagine the fear and determination of the people who had written them. As he read, he noticed a faint glow coming from the far side of the room. It came from a small stone pedestal with an object resting on it. Rain walked closer and gasped. On the pedestal was a crystal, clear but shimmering with colors that changed as he moved. The crystal seemed to pulse with light, soft but steady. He had never seen anything like it. He reached out to touch it, and the moment his fingers brushed the surface, the chamber seemed to hum quietly. The glow grew slightly brighter, as if welcoming him. Rain stepped back, amazed. He could not understand the crystal's purpose, but he sensed that it was important. Perhaps it had been part of the studies that the previous occupant had done. He carefully lifted the crystal and placed it in his backpack. He knew he had to be careful. This was something rare and valuable. Holding it made him feel a connection to the past, to the people who had built this secret place. He explored the room further and found a small staircase leading upward. It was narrow and twisted, but it seemed to lead to another part of the prison. Rain climbed slowly, the hum of the crystal in his backpack encouraging him. When he reached the top, he found himself in a room that overlooked the main hall he had explored earlier. Broken windows let sunlight in, illuminating dust particles that floated like tiny stars in the air. From here, he could see the vastness of the prison and realize how large and complex it was. Rain noticed another corridor he had not explored. This one led to a section with doors that still had their locks intact. He approached the first door and tried the handle. Surprisingly, it turned easily. The room inside was small and contained old furniture, a bed frame, and a wooden chest. He opened the chest and found more notebooks and tools, similar to the ones he had seen in the tunnels. Each notebook had detailed notes about plants, water sources, and experiments conducted in the mountains. The person who had worked here had been very careful and meticulous. He continued down the corridor, opening more rooms. Some had more letters, some had old equipment, and some were almost empty. Each room seemed to tell a small part of a larger story. Rain realized that this prison had not only been a place of confinement, but also a place of study and discovery. The more he explored, the more he understood that the people who had lived and worked here had left behind a hidden world, full of knowledge and secrets. As he reached the end of the corridor, he found a door that led outside. The sunlight was bright, and the fresh mountain air filled his lungs. He stepped out onto a small balcony that overlooked the cliffs. From here, he could see the valley below, the streams, forests, and distant mountains stretching endlessly. Rain took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what he had discovered. The abandoned prison was more than a scary old building. It was a place full of life stories, experiments, and secrets waiting to be uncovered. Rand knew he could not leave everything behind. He decided to take careful notes, photographs, and the crystal he had found. He planned to return to the village and share his findings with people who could understand and appreciate them. But he also knew that the adventure was far from over. The tunnels, chambers, and hidden objects hinted at even more mysteries waiting inside the prison. He spent a few more hours exploring, carefully documenting everything he could. As the sun began to set, casting orange and pink light across the mountains, Rand felt a mix of exhaustion and excitement. He had discovered so much in one day, but he knew that tomorrow would bring new surprises. With the crystal in his backpack, the letters in his hand, and a notebook filled with notes, he finally climbed back to the main hall. He took one last look at the hidden chambers and whispered to himself that he would return soon. Rand left the prison through the main gate, the cold wind hitting his face. He looked back at the high walls and towers, wondering about the people who had built this place. He felt proud of his courage and grateful for the secrets he had uncovered. The abandoned prison had shocked him, filled him with curiosity, and given him a story he would never forget. As he walked back down the mountain, the shadows grew longer, and the sky turned deep blue. He could not stop thinking about the tunnels, the crystal, and the letters. The adventure had only begun, and he knew that the secrets of the abandoned prison were far from fully revealed. Rand smiled to himself. Tomorrow, he would return. He could already imagine what he might find next, hidden deep inside the mountains where no one else dared to go. Rand could not sleep that night, even though he was back in his small home in the village. The abandoned prison and the strange crystal kept running through his mind. Every detail, every note, and every jar he had seen seemed to whisper to him. He knew he had to return. The prison held secrets, and he had only scratched the surface. He ate a small meal, packed his bag carefully, and left at dawn. The sky was painted with soft orange and pink, and the mountains waited silently, as if calling him back. The climb up the mountain felt easier this time. Rand knew the path, and his heart was full of excitement. He moved quickly, reaching the prison by late morning. The gates were still crooked, the walls covered in moss, and the silence was absolute. He entered and went straight to the chamber where he had found the tunnel the day before. The crystal in his backpack seemed to hum softly, almost guiding him. Rand felt a strange connection to the object, as if it was part of the prison itself. He entered the hidden tunnel again. The damp walls and cold air welcomed him like an old friend. He followed the path carefully, using his flashlight to look for any signs he had missed before. After several twists and turns, he reached the second chamber. The stone shelves and jars seemed unchanged, but something felt different. The air had a slight energy, and the hum of the crystal grew stronger. Rand approached the pedestal where he had found it before. The crystal pulsed slightly, casting tiny reflections on the walls. Rand knew he had to go further. He had seen the small staircase leading down from the second chamber, but he had not explored it completely. He descended carefully. The stairs were narrow and dark, and the stone was slippery under his boots. As he reached the bottom, he found a new tunnel opening into a large underground hall. This hall was unlike anything he had seen. The ceiling was high, supported by massive stone pillars. The walls had carvings that told stories of people, mountains, and strange symbols. It looked like an ancient hall hidden beneath the prison, preserved perfectly despite the years. Rand's flashlight revealed tables, chests, and more shelves filled with notebooks, jars, and tools. Many objects were similar to those in the chambers above, but some were completely new. He noticed a large chest in the center of the hall. Carefully, he opened it and found bundles of letters, each tied with a ribbon. He picked one up and began to read. This letter spoke of a hidden room, built beneath the prison long ago, where a person had stored their most important work. It mentioned a map, drawings, and even a small crystal similar to the one Rand had found. The writer had hoped that one day someone curious and brave would find it. Rand's excitement grew. Could this hall be the key to understanding the prison's full secret? He looked around for any clues. On one wall, he noticed a faint line in the stone that seemed different from the cracks caused by age. He pressed lightly, and to his surprise, a section of the wall moved, revealing a hidden doorway. A small cold breeze escaped from the opening. Rand felt his pulse quicken. He had found a room hidden for decades, perhaps even longer. He entered slowly. The room was small but filled with light coming from a narrow window high on the wall. The walls were lined with shelves, and in the center, a stone pedestal held a second crystal. Glowing faintly, Rand's eyes widened. The crystal pulsed with energy, brighter than the first one. Around it, notebooks were stacked neatly, their covers labeled with symbols and diagrams. It seemed as if someone had built this room specifically to protect this crystal. In the knowledge store here, Ryan picked up the notebooks and flipped through the pages. They were filled with observations, experiments, and sketches of the mountains, the prison, and even the crystals themselves. The writing spoke about energy, nature, and how the crystals could respond to the environment. Rand realized that the person who had worked here had been studying something very special, something connected to the mountains, the prison, and the crystals. A sound suddenly echoed through the room. Rand froze. It was faint at first, like footsteps far away, but then it grew louder. He realized that he was not completely alone. Someone or something had entered the underground hall. Rand gripped his flashlight and turned slowly. From the shadows emerged a figure, an old man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He wore simple clothing and carried a small bag. Rand's first instinct was fear, but something about the man's calm presence reassured him. The old man spoke softly. "I have been waiting for someone like you," he said. "Curious, brave, and respectful. Few have ever returned here willingly." Rand blinked in surprise. "Who are you?" he asked. The man smiled. "My name is Imran. I have lived in these mountains for many years, studying and protecting what others have left behind. This prison, and the secrets beneath it, were never meant to harm anyone. They were meant to teach and guide, to preserve knowledge that the world had forgotten." Rand felt a mix of awe and excitement. He had never imagined that someone had lived here, hidden from the world, keeping the prison's secrets safe. Imran invited him to sit, and Rand listened as the old man explained the history. The abandoned prison had once held people who had done wrong, but it had also been a place for learning. The hidden chambers and underground hall were created by a scholar who wanted to study the mountains, the crystals, and nature itself. Over time, the work had been abandoned, but the knowledge remained, waiting for someone curious to discover it. Imran showed Rand the second crystal. "These crystals are connected to the mountains," he explained. "They respond to energy, to care, and to curiosity. When someone like you finds them, they guide you to what is hidden, helping you understand the world in new ways." Rand listened closely, amazed by the idea that the crystals could be more than beautiful stones. They were tools, keys to the knowledge preserved in the prison and the mountains. The old man then led Rand to a corner of the hall where a small chest was locked. Imran handed Rand a key he had found years ago. "This chest contains the final part of the scholar's work," he said. "It is maps, notebooks, and the instructions for understanding the crystals. Many have tried to find it, but the prison hides its secrets well." Rand opened the chest carefully. Inside, he found detailed sketches of the mountains, the tunnels, and even notes on how the crystals interacted with nature. It was a treasure trove of knowledge, preserved for decades. Rand spent hours with Imran, learning about the crystals, the history of the prison, and the hidden chambers. He realized that the adventure he had begun was not just about exploring an old building. It was about uncovering history, knowledge, and understanding a world that few people had ever seen. The abandoned prison had shocked him, but now he felt gratitude. It was a gift, a challenge, and an invitation to continue learning. As the sun began to set outside, casting golden light through the small windows, Rand knew he had to return to the village. He carefully packed the notebooks, the crystal, and his own notes. Imran smiled and said, "Remember, this knowledge is powerful, but it is not meant to be used carelessly. Respect it, and it will guide you well." Rand nodded, feeling the weight and responsibility of what he had discovered. Climbing back up through the tunnel, he felt the mountain wind on his face once more. The abandoned prison looked quiet and empty from the outside, but Rand now knew its true story. It had been a place of confinement, study, and discovery, and he had uncovered only a part of it. The mountains held more secrets, and the crystals would continue to guide him. As he walked down the path toward his village, Rain's mind raced with plans. He wanted to return, to learn more, and perhaps to help others understand the hidden wonders of the prison. He had started as a curious boy, but now he felt like a keeper of secrets, someone entrusted with knowledge that few had ever seen. The adventure was far from over. The prison, the tunnels, and the hidden crystals had only begun to reveal their story, and Rain was ready to uncover every part of it. The next morning, Rain woke with excitement. He could barely wait to return to the abandoned prison. The memory of the underground hall, the glowing crystal, and the letters from the hidden chambers filled his mind. Today, he would explore even deeper parts of the prison, the ones he had not reached before. He packed his backpack carefully, including the crystal he had found, the notebooks he had taken notes from, and a flashlight with extra batteries. The climb up the mountain was familiar, yet thrilling. The sun rose slowly, painting the peaks in gold and pink. Birds sang, and the streams sparkled like jewels. Rain moved quickly, eager to reach the prison gates. When he arrived, the wind howled around the high walls, but inside, the silence of the old building welcomed him. He entered, going straight to the hidden tunnel that led to the underground chambers. Rain carefully descended into the first chamber. The shelves and jars seemed unchanged, but the hum of the crystal in his backpack grew stronger. He felt it guiding him, pointing the way towards something important. He followed the narrow staircase that led down to the large underground hall. The air was cooler here, and the stone walls seemed to carry the echoes of centuries. Rain felt a thrill of anticipation. He had already discovered so much, but today, he believed he would uncover the prison's deepest secret. When he reached the hall, he noticed something different. A faint light flickered from one corner of the room. He approached carefully. There, behind a row of stone pillars, he saw a small door carved into the wall. It was partially hidden, and the edges were covered with moss. Rain pressed his hand on the door, and to his surprise, it moved easily. A cold breeze escaped, carrying a faint scent of flowers and earth. He stepped inside. The room was small, but full of objects unlike anything he had seen before. On the walls were drawings of mountains, rivers, and crystals. Some drawings glowed faintly, as if reflecting the light of the crystal in his backpack. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it rested a third crystal. This one was larger than the first two, and its glow was stronger. It pulsed with a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Rain's eyes widened. He had never seen anything so beautiful and mysterious. As he moved closer, the crystal seemed to react to his presence. The light grew brighter, and the air around it felt warm. Rain noticed symbols etched into the pedestal. They were similar to the ones in the underground hall and in the notebooks. He traced them with his fingers, and a sense of energy ran through him. It was as if the crystal held knowledge and power beyond imagination. Rain realized that this was the ultimate secret of the abandoned prison, something that connected the building, the mountains, and the natural world. He carefully placed the crystal in his backpack, feeling its weight and energy. Then, he noticed a small trapdoor in the floor. It was hidden beneath a rug of moss and dirt. Curious, he lifted it and discovered a spiral staircase leading further down. The air from below smelled of fresh water, and faint sounds echoed up from the darkness. Rain took a deep breath and began his descent. Each step was careful, and his flashlight revealed carvings on the walls. These carvings told stories of people, nature, and crystals, all connected in ways he could barely understand. At the bottom of the spiral staircase, Rain entered a large cavern. The walls glimmered with crystals embedded in the stone. Light from his flashlight reflected in hundreds of colors, creating a magical, almost otherworldly scene. In the center of the cavern was a small pool of clear water. Its surface shimmered, and the reflection of the crystals made the entire room sparkle. Rain felt a sense of wonder unlike anything he had experienced. This place seemed alive, ancient, and full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. As he explored, he noticed markings around the pool. They resembled instructions or a guide. Rain carefully examined them, realizing they described how the crystals interacted with water, light, and energy. The previous scholar had clearly studied the connection between nature and these mysterious stones. Rain felt a growing sense of responsibility. He understood that the knowledge here was powerful and rare, meant to be preserved and respected. Suddenly, a movement caught his eye. From behind a large crystal formation, a small animal appeared. It was unlike any creature he had seen before, with shiny eyes and fur that glowed faintly in the light. Rain froze, watching it move gracefully toward the pool. The animal drank from the water, and as it did, the crystals around the cavern pulsed in response. Rain realized that the pool and the crystals were connected, forming a hidden system of energy that kept the cavern alive. He had discovered something extraordinary. Ray and spent hours documenting the cavern. He drew the layout, took notes on the crystals, and carefully observed how the pool affected the light and energy around him. He realized that this hidden part of the prison was not only a place of learning, but also a sanctuary for life, even in the heart of the mountains. It was a connection between history, nature, and discovery, and he felt privileged to witness it. As the sun began to lower outside, casting long shadows across the mountains, Rain decided it was time to return. He carefully climbed back up the spiral staircase, replacing the trapdoor and moss to hide it from casual visitors. The third crystal remained in his backpack, pulsing softly, as if acknowledging that its secret was now partially known. He moved through the underground hall and back into the hidden tunnel. Feeling a sense of accomplishment and awe reaching the surface, Rain paused to look at the prison. From this angle, it seemed smaller, less intimidating, but he knew the secrets it held were vast and remarkable. He took a deep breath of the fresh mountain air and began the descent toward the village. His mind raced with thoughts of the crystals, the hidden rooms, and the magical cavern. He understood that the prison story was far more than he had imagined. It was a place where the past, the present, and the mysteries of nature converged. By the time Rain reached the village, the sky was painted with twilight. He carefully hid the crystals and notebooks in his room, knowing he would need time to study and understand them. He thought of the adventure ahead, the discoveries still waiting in the prison, and the responsibility of preserving the knowledge he had uncovered. The abandoned prison had shocked him from the start, but now he realized that it had also gifted him with an incredible opportunity to learn, explore, and protect the secrets of the mountains. Rayn could not stop smiling. His adventure was far from over, and he already planned his return. Tomorrow, he would go back to the prison, ready to uncover even more hidden chambers and perhaps meet the scholar's secret notes that had not yet been found. The mountains, the crystals, and the abandoned prison had become part of his life, a world of wonder that few people would ever see. As he lay down to rest, Rain felt a deep sense of connection to the prison, the mountains, and the hidden world he had discovered. He knew that courage, curiosity, and respect for the secrets of the past were the keys to unlocking even greater mysteries. The abandoned prison had already shocked him, but he understood now that the true shock was the knowledge, beauty, and life hidden within its walls. Tomorrow, the adventure would continue. Rain could hardly sleep that night. His mind raced with thoughts of the abandoned prison, the glowing crystals, and the hidden cavern beneath the mountains. He had discovered more than anyone in his village could imagine, but he knew the story was far from finished. The knowledge he had uncovered was extraordinary, and he felt a growing responsibility to protect it while also sharing it in the right way. The next morning, he packed his backpack carefully. The 3 crystals were safely wrapped, the notebooks were stacked neatly, and he brought his flashlight and rope. He wanted to explore the prison one last time and see if there were any final secrets waiting for him. The mountain air was cool and crisp, and the sun cast golden light over the peaks. Rain's heart beat with excitement. Today, he felt that everything would come together. He climbed quickly, taking the familiar path. As he approached the prison, he noticed how quiet the mountain was. The wind whispered through the trees, and birds flew overhead, as if guiding him. When he entered the gates, the prison seemed alive in a way it had not before. Shadows danced on the walls, and the hum of the crystals seemed to grow stronger. Rain felt that the mountains themselves were welcoming him back. He went directly to the hidden tunnel and descended into the underground hall. The chambers and shelves looked just as he had left them, but the energy in the air was different. It was as if the crystals in the hidden cavern were waiting for him to understand the final secret. Rand moved carefully through the hall, noting the arrangements of jars, notebooks, and tools. Everything seemed to have a purpose, a connection to the mountains and to the past. He descended the spiral staircase to the hidden cavern once more. The water in the pool shimmered in the light of his flashlight, and the embedded crystals glowed softly. Rand approached the pool and held the 3 crystals in his hands. He felt their energy pulsing together, stronger than ever. As he placed them near the water, the pool began to glow, casting light across the cavern in every color imaginable. Rand's eyes widened. The crystals were responding, and the hidden power of the cavern was coming alive. As the glow filled the room, Rand noticed something extraordinary. Images appeared on the walls, shimmering like reflections. He saw people from long ago, moving through the prison, writing letters, studying crystals, and exploring the mountains. The images showed the scholar who had hidden the chambers, working tirelessly to preserve knowledge. Rand realized that the crystals were not just stones, they were keys to the memory of the past, holding the energy and wisdom of everyone who had lived and worked in the prison. Rand understood that the prison had been more than a building. It was a place of history, of study, and of life itself. The hidden crystals connected the people, the mountains, and the knowledge in a way that no one else had ever seen. The glowing pool reflected not only the crystals, but also the past, showing the courage, hope, and determination of those who had been there before him. Rand felt honored to witness it. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and saw Imran, the old man who had guided him before. "The crystals have chosen to reveal their full secret," Imran said softly. "Only someone with courage, curiosity, and respect can see this. You are the one who has earned this knowledge." Rand nodded, feeling a mix of awe and humility. He realized the responsibility he carried. The abandoned prison had shocked him, but now he understood that the greatest shock was the story of life and wisdom it held. Imran guided Rand to the edge of the pool. "These crystals can be used to teach others, to show the connection between nature, history, and human effort," he explained. "But it must be done carefully. The knowledge is powerful, and it must never be used recklessly." Rand listened closely. He knew that this was more than an adventure, it was a mission. He would protect the crystals and the hidden chambers while sharing their story in a way that inspired and educated. For hours, Rand and Imran explored the cavern together. They examined the carvings, studied the glowing crystals, and read the notes left behind by the scholar. Every detail added to the story of the prison, revealing a world that no one in the village could imagine. Rand realized that the prison had been a place of confinement, but it had also been a place of learning, hope, and hidden beauty. The mountains had preserved this secret, waiting for someone brave enough to discover it. As the sun began to set outside, Rand knew it was time to leave the cavern. He carefully packed the 3 crystals and the most important notebooks. Imran smiled and said, "You have seen what few have ever seen. Remember, this knowledge is a gift. Use it wisely, and it will guide you well." Rand nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a sense of excitement. He knew that his adventure had changed him forever, climbing back through the tunnel. Rand felt the cool mountain wind on his face. The abandoned prison looked quiet and empty from the outside, but he knew its true story. It was a place of history, study, and wonder. The hidden chambers, the glowing crystals, and the magical cavern had all revealed their secrets to him. He felt proud of his courage and grateful for the opportunity to witness such extraordinary knowledge. When he returned to the village, Rand shared the story with the elders carefully. He described the prison, the hidden tunnels, the crystals, and the cavern, but he emphasized the need for respect and caution. The villagers were amazed. Many had heard stories about the abandoned prison, but none had ever known its true secrets. Rand's discovery inspired everyone to look at the mountains differently, as a place full of hidden wonders and history. Over the next few weeks, Rand returned to the prison several times. He carefully explored new areas, documented the discoveries, and learned more about the crystals and the hidden chambers. He never rushed, and he always respected the secrets he uncovered. The adventure had become more than excitement, it was now a journey of understanding, learning, and preservation. And also shared his findings with a few trusted teachers and scholars. Together, they studied the crystals, the notes, and the letters. They realized that the abandoned prison was not only a historical site, but also a place of knowledge that could teach people about courage, hope, and the natural world. Rain had become the guardian of a secret that connected the past, the present, and the mountains themselves. Months passed, and Rain grew wiser. He still climbed the mountains, visited the prison, and explored the tunnels. But he also shared the lessons he had learned with his village and friends. The crystals continued to glow, a reminder of the mysteries he had uncovered and the stories waiting to be told. The abandoned prison, once a place of fear and curiosity, had become a symbol of knowledge, courage, and the hidden beauty of the mountains. One evening, as Rain sat by a stream near his village, he thought about the adventure that had begun months ago. He remembered the first time he saw the abandoned prison, the hidden tunnels, the letters, and the glowing crystals. He smiled, realizing how much he had grown. The mountains had given him a challenge, a secret, and a gift, and he had accepted it with courage and respect. Rain knew that the adventure was never truly over. The abandoned prison still held hidden chambers, new crystals, and stories waiting to be discovered. But he also understood that the greatest discovery was not the crystals or the tunnels. It was the journey itself. The adventure had taught him about courage, curiosity, and the responsibility that comes with knowledge. As the sun set behind the mountains, Rain stood up and looked at the peaks. The abandoned prison rested quietly in the distance, its walls holding secrets that would continue to inspire and surprise anyone brave enough to explore. Rain smiled, ready for whatever came next. He had discovered the hidden truth of the prison, and he knew that the mountains would always guide him toward new adventures. The abandoned prison had shocked him, but now it had also given him wisdom, courage, and a story that would be remembered for generations. Rain had become a part of its history, a boy who dared to explore, who uncovered secrets, and who respected the power of the mountains and the hidden world within. His adventure had reached a conclusion, but the legacy of the prison and the crystals would live on forever.